Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Donald March. I'm the town of Mamaroneck historian and the president of the Mamaroneck Historical Society. I'd like to welcome you to our 1816 one-room schoolhouse. Father Time has called us back to this location today to celebrate a trunk full of treasures. A chance for people in the community to bring two items to Mr. William Ketchum, a noted antique specialist, and has come to us from Rye as a special chance for us to do a trove of treasures. The things from your attic, the things that you may have forgotten about, the things that maybe dust has accumulated on, the things that maybe are worth more than you'll ever know. On this, the 231st anniversary, exactly to the day, of the skirmish of Heathcote Hill that was fought here in 1776, which helped save and preserve our nation's independence, we bring you William Ketchum from Rye. William.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here in Mamaroneck. It sounds as though I'm from a great distance away, but of course I'm not. I live in Rye, and my wife runs a business on Valley Place in Mamaroneck. So I'm here quite frequently, particularly looking for treasures at Chatsworth's on Main Street. Now, today we're going to be appraising the items that people bring in from their homes, and very often they are of substantial value. Very often they don't appear to be, but the sentimental value to the family may far exceed the monetary value. I think that a lot of us, unfortunately, have been somewhat misled by Antiques Roadshow and programs of that sort, which are carefully monitored in order to create the impression that there are a vast number of terribly valuable things out in the world just waiting for somebody to find them. The truth of the matter is that the great bulk of items that all of us own are of relatively minor monetary value, but they are often of very great sentimental value. The other thing to keep in mind is that an appraisal is an opinion based on the judgment of the appraiser, whom you hope has some experience in the field. 3 or 4 appraisers can appraise the same item and come up with very, very different results. So bear in mind that it's not the gospel. I mean, this is something that is art rather than a skill that is rigidly documented. So we'll begin and just see where we can go with these objects, and I'm sure they're going to be of great interest. But also remember that there will be things that I have not the background to evaluate, and I'll often tell you, well, you should go to one of the auction houses, have them look at it, or perhaps go online to have it checked, because no appraiser knows everything. Some of them may act as though they know everything, but none of us do. And discretion is the better part of valor. So, who's first? Oh, is there something? Oh, a table is arriving. All right. Okay. All right. Tell me a little about this table.
All I know is that we bought it from someone and he didn't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we turn it over and we see that it is 20th century with modern milled boards and screws. It's in a French provincial style of the 18th century, but it is not French or 18th century. It's American, a small table of a type that did not even exist in the 18th century, though the carving and decoration did. It has a cabriolet. But value is as a decorative piece, perhaps 150, 175. Don't plan to retire on it.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it.
Who's next to suffer disappointment?
There's two items here.
All right.
Okay. This first one is, watch the tuck comes
I
along.
have it.
Yeah. It's a decanter that we found in our house. The original house went back to the 1760s. I'm sure this came later. This was down in a big old cabinet down in the basement.
It is a free-blown glass decanter with a pontle mark, which tells you right away that before 1840, used for wine or liqueurs of some sort, has a Greek key design running around it. It's definitely early 19th century, value about $75 to $100.
And the second item I have is, I think they call it cloisonne.
Cloisonne plate.
Yeah, and I have a picture of a great grandmother sitting in a chair, and this is on a mantelpiece behind her. And I know it's not in the best of condition. My brother and I used to play with it when we were young. I know it hit the floor more than once, but but it's. I was just curious if you have an idea when that was, because
It's cloisonne, it's Japanese, and it probably dates to the mid-19th century or even a bit earlier than that. Were it not for the damage, particularly in this area, it would be of very, substantial value, even with the damage. Incidentally, it's what's called a charger. It's not really intended as a plate that you'd eat off. It's a serving dish. Value would be about $200 even in this condition, because it's a good early piece of cloisonne.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So you say early 1800s perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that.
You're quite welcome.
Thanks a lot.
On that side,
What do we have here?
my wife has a little Chinese statue.
How long have you had it?
How long you had that?
About 20 years.
About 20, yeah. It's early 20th century. It's a Chinese figure of a sage or a holy man of some sort, and it isn't from the earliest period, but on the other hand, it's very well made and is a piece that has really no significant damage. There's a couple of tiny chips on the base, but chips on the base, if they're small, are not that serious a matter. The detail is wonderful. If you look at the teeth and the tongue, the eyes, the modern examples don't have that quality of detail. And that it survived for perhaps 100 years, because it's probably, I would think, 1875, 1925, in that range. Value of 150. Nice piece. I guess so.
Welcome.
Okay. A couple things, Bill, for you to look at.
Looks like a planter or a cookie jar.
I think it's a McCoy cookie jar.
McCoy, of course. Sure, but that's the top.
Yeah.
And it should have the McCoy mark, which it does on the base. Yeah. This is a fairly uncommon example of McCoy. The McCoy Pottery Company made a wide variety of ceramics, including a major variety of cookie jars. Some of you may recall, God, it's got to be 20 years ago, Andy Warhol's collection was auctioned off, and one of his strong suits was cookie jars. He had like 40 or 50 of them. but I don't think he had one like this. This is a nice one.
It's pretty old, actually.
Yeah, it's probably 1920s, 1930s, and it looks to me to be in pretty good condition. I don't see any, oh, there's a little nick and here's a little hairline here. But these are not major damages. I would think in its present condition, about 175, 200, because the cookie jars are very popular.
Okay.
All right, let's see
The next one's a real stumper, I think.
yeah. It's European. It's oak with what appears to be brass fixed fittings. Now, what we would like to see here would be a mark, maker's mark. It's almost certainly German, and probably from the looks of the brass applique was done with a machine, so it's 19th century rather than 18th century. It has a little ding here in the sense that people have too enthusiastically opened the top and they have dented the top, but otherwise it's pretty doggone good. And conditions.
Is it silver?
No.
The inside of the cover kind of looked like it was silver to me, and it was hallmarked.
Yeah, no, I don't. There is something in there, but I can't read it. It would be unusual for it to be silver lined because the exterior is all brass.
Okay.
But it's a good piece, and probably in the market $300.
Great, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Terrific.
All right. Who's next? Okay. 20th century ceramic figure representative of a bricklayer who looks female rather than male, which is a good sign, equal opportunity. Very good condition. How long have you had it?
Probably 35, 40 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's probably 19, from the looks of her costume, she's probably 1930, 1940 when women got into the industrial field. Condition is very good, 75 to 100. And the other two are a set. Goldscheider, which is German. And how long were these? Same, okay. Fine china, okay.
We would get these from my father.
Yeah. They're Art Deco period. So they're probably, say, 1915, 1930, in that range. And they seem to be, there's a little chip out under his hat, but it's pretty well disguised. You don't notice it that much. So for the set, 2 1/4. Usually 1 spoon. 1 spoon. Is this representative of a set?
No.
Oh, it's a World's Fair, 1939.
Yeah.
I happen to have one just like it.
Really?
Yes, except mine
That
is.
brings the price down.
No, they're not rare. of
No,
course
I know
not.
they're not collectors.
However, the difference is yours has the administration building on it, Many of them were made simply with the handle decorated, including mine. There aren't as many that have different buildings. What they did was certain of the spoons would be decorated on the interior of the spoon bowl with one or more of the buildings on the campus of the fair. This one's in very good condition. It's Rogers Brothers. It's, of course, it's electroplated silver. It's not solid silver. And it's in very good condition and a little bit less common than the standard ones, about $20. You're quite welcome. Oh, I thought that was part of the decoration. All right, let's take a look and see what we have. First thing, with any early piece of furniture, the first thing you do is look for a maker's mark. If the man who made the piece stamped it or imprinted it in any way with his name, the value is 3 to 4 times or even more than an unidentified chair. This one is not, unfortunately, marked. This is what's called a rod back Windsor chair. The period is about 1820 to 1850. It was originally black with little yellow bands to decorate it. Most of the paint is gone. However, it's actually, the fact that it's the original paint is for many collectors very good. The problem is that it has been restored many years ago. The crest rail broke, and somebody took a big piece of iron and screwed it on to hold it together. They did a good job. I mean, no criticism of it, but it hurts the value. But the thing that really hurts these pieces is that many, many thousands of them were made, and amazingly, thousands of them still exist. So that in good condition, in mint condition, say with most of the original paint, this is a $120 chair. In this condition, with the restoration, it's about half that, 60 bucks, what it would be, yeah. But that's what it is, it's a very old chair. You know, it's the first half of the 19th century. It's not the first period of Windsors where you have bow backs and things like that. They're the more practical, easier to make ones were turned out, say 1820, 1840, that period. But that's what it is, and it's a good old, it's perfect for this schoolhouse.
Can't have it.
All right, too bad. Too bad, yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
He's gotta go.
I got another piece in the car. I'll go get it.
All right. Okay, so I guess we'll suspend for a minute. And, oh, wait a minute, here comes something.
A little pin she's got.
Yes, very nice little pin. But I am not a jewelry person. It looks to me as though this is a significant thing. I suspect that it's gold, but I'm not qualified to say. And if you're really curious about what its value might be, what you might do is take a run down to Manhattan and go to Doyle's Auction Gallery in Manhattan. They're very good on jewelry, and just say, I mean, you don't have to tell them you want to auction it, but just say, I'm wondering about the value in terms of what I might do with it, and see what they say, because I think it'd be worth some hundreds of dollars, but it's not my field. All right, so I guess we are awaiting the next arrival.
This is nothing, we're trying to get it open.
Ah.
This is old.
Oh, what
That's
is
about $9
yeah? And you can't get it open? Oh, this is
Press
wonderful.
000 to get it open. I guess when you put $100 in with 4 zeros across, right?
Maybe.
That's the only way you can get it open. There's no...
This is entitled Uncle Sam's Register Bank. And there's always a question with these things, whether or not they were actually intended for children or whether they were intended to help adults save. I don't know, but I do know they're usually thought of as kids' toys. This one is in very good condition. We know it's worth at least $9.15 because
That's how much I got in there.
the contents.
It registers as you push
Yeah.
it in the nickels and dimes.
It's post-World War II. It's probably 50s, 60s, that period. Very often they have the name of the company, but I do not see that on
No, I
this.
don't see that.
Oh, here it is, Durable Toy and Novelty Corporation in Hackensack. Okay, that's where it came from. And value without the contents, about $35. That's collectible, yeah.
The silver in there is probably.
That's what we don't know. That's what we don't know. All right, what else do we have here? It looks to me like a painting that's coming forward.
I got one in the car, something.
Okay. Bring that painting up here. Print. Whatever. Bring up that photo. Oh my heavens. Presidents of the United States. The last one up is John F. Kennedy. And so that dates the piece pretty clearly for us. From the very beginning in this country, and I mean the time of George Washington, many prints were made indicating the appreciation that the people had and the saleability, of course, of pictures of the president. For example, here you have a group of them. Over here you have George in his glory. George, incidentally, is a good print. It's probably worth $300 to $400. So I hope it stays here and doesn't disappear. As wonderful a president as John F. Kennedy was, there were a vast number of these made, and as a result, the value's about $50.
So more than what I thought.
Yeah, so,
Thank you.
you're quite welcome. And I see that we have a very nice little country federal table here. Okay. This is what's called a country Hepplewhite table. It was made by a craftsman who worked probably not in a large city, but in a rural area. And it dates about 1810 to 1840. If you look at the construction of the piece, which is always important, you see that it's been dovetailed. In other words, the side and the front were put together by cutting triangular cuts in order to lock them together. It's called dovetailing. Today, if you have that sort of thing in a piece of furniture, it's done with a machine. In the 19th and even the early 20th century, it was done by people who actually had the ability to cut these things by eye, because they were wonderful craftsmen. The other thing you notice with it, if you look at it closely, is that there are square nails, which are often referred to as cut nails. They were nails that were square at the top, and actually as you look down them, you see that the shaft of the nail is also square, and they have blunt ends. So they're not like modern nails. The modern nail, the wire nail, didn't appear until the 1890s. And prior to that, people used these cut nails. The other thing it tells you it's old is if you feel the bottom, you feel that at the sides here it has been cut down. That's called a chamfer. It's been chamfered so it will slide into a slot in the back and sides in order to hold in the bottom of the piece. So that is not done today either. The secondary wood, in other words, the wood that you don't see, is pine, and the rest of it is cherry. Pieces cherry, which was a very popular wood. This little brass handle is not original, because if you look closely, you'll see the shadow of something else that was on it. So this is not original, but it's of the period. It's old. Somebody was able to come up with it. Now let's see if we can find what we can find to criticize about it. The height is nice. It's not the earliest period because it isn't put together with wooden pegs.
Yeah.
So it is toward the end of the period, probably about 1840, 1850. I must say that a little bit of roughness, but that's vacuum cleaner and cleaning lady work. We know about that. Other than that, it's in pretty doggone good shape. 300, 350. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice little table. I've got 4 or 5 of them.
I
in
just
the house.
picked it up. I just got it.
Just got it.
Yeah.
Found it on the street.
I don't know, auction it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't care how much this stuff is worth. I
If
just
you
like
like
it's
it.
old.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
$10.
Well, that's a good eye. You got a
Thank
nice piece of
Thank
furniture.
you. Thanks.
All right.
What else do you people?
All right. Oh, yes.
From
Pair of binoculars.
from a television show of the 1950s. I had
And the
Tom
show.
Hulse.
Oh, Tom Corbett, Space Cadet. Oh, I remember Tom. Oh, yes. Yep. I won't try to look through it because I have trouble enough looking through my own glasses. But yeah, it looks to be workable. I mean, it doesn't look like the problem. This is good. Tom Corbett was not Buck Rogers. I mean, he was not that famous, but he did his humble best to terrify and intrigue children, and the condition is pretty good considering the hands it must have passed through, and it probably is in the $150 to $200 range, because collectibles like this are very hot. I mean, there are a lot of younger kids who don't even remember that there was anything before 1950.
And it is workable.
That's important too, because you can see his rocket ship if you adjusted them sufficiently. All right.
Bill, can you take a peek at these presidents over here?
Pardon?
Can you take a peek at our presidents over here?
Well, this is this a courier? I don't think this is a courier. Let's see who it is. All right, we can tell. Let's see, it goes up to Polk, Tyler, Van Buren, known as the Red Fox of Kinderhook, guiding sort of a big crook. Adams, Madison. Let's see if we can get the latest one. 37, 41. Okay, and I think that 45. Okay. It's about 1850. Let's see what it says about who produced this chromolithograph. In Courier. Oh, that's very good. It's Nathaniel Courier. That's good. Now, the interesting thing about it is that we have presidents listed here, 1845, 1841, 1845, and it is dated. Courier produced it in 1844. So he produced it after the election of James Polk. And in other words, it was gotten right out. We always think of today, you know, something happens and instantly it's reproduced, but even then they could do it. As soon as this fellow Polk was president, in 1845, they immediately came out with this chromolithograph, which is a colored lithograph, and it's in very good condition. In the original frame, this is a typical Empire Cove frame, original backboard. And I see it's on loan from a loyal member of your group. Value, about $200. Let's see if I can put it up here without making it considerably less valuable. Let's see. All right, there we are. Let's look at George on the other side here. I mean, I'm sure some of you are familiar with the fact that Currier and Ives, well, first Nathaniel Currier, and then the partnership of Currier and Ives produced a tremendous, thousands of different lithographs and then colored lithographs, which are called chromolithographs, during the 19th century. This particular one is Currier and Ives, down on Nassau Street in Manhattan. So this is going to be probably around the time of the Civil War, 1860, 1870. Again, the original backboard and the original Empire frame. George with his signature, however, he did not sign each one individually. Value about $150 on this one. Yeah, make sure it's hooked up. Now, while we're waiting for the next objects to arrive, is there? Yeah. I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Committee of the Westchester County Historical Society, and I see that you're involved in a great struggle here to save the building across the street. And we certainly support you in any way we can because it's an important building, and it would be a shame to see it knocked down. There's no question about that. And I know that John is devoting time and effort, and many other people are as well, to trying to save it. So I certainly want you to know that we support you in this, and certainly do hope that we'll be able to save the building in some manner. It's unclear as to exactly what one does in a situation like this. It isn't likely, I think, that it's going to be preserved as a private house. It will have to be something else. Do you have anything on that?
Nothing per se right now. However, our great expectations are that the building comes into the public domain at some time in the future, and that our efforts as part of the Historical Society has been to be the spearhead of that effort to do that. And likewise, as you've come down on circuit to us today to lend your support to that effort, we likewise will come up and do what we can to save anything along the Sound Shore. This Historical Society has a long history of trying its best to be a preservation advocate up and down the Sound Shore communities, everywhere from Greenwich to the Bronx and beyond.
Well, we of course now are faced with a similar situation. Bird House, I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, it's been in the Sound Shore newspapers. The Bird residence is located in Milton, which is a rather unique little area of Rye, the city of Rye. There's originally a seaport and a shipbuilding center, has many old houses in it, among which is the residence of Junius Bird, who was a famous 20th century archaeologist. In fact, some people say that he was the prototype for those crazy movies about the archaeologist whose name I don't recall, but who runs all over the place digging up things and fighting Nazis and all some I'm sure some of you have seen these.
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones, thank you. There is a picture of Junius Bird with one of these hats that is eerily similar to Indiana Jones. Just amazing. But anyway, his brother was an anthropologist, and the two of them were really remarkable characters, and they lived in this little classic revival house. It was built in 1835 down in Milton, and their father had been a entomologist, and he was a big bug man, particularly butterflies. And so there was this whole family tradition. The two men, their sister was the Rye librarian for something like 50 years, Miss Bird, as she was known, and they're all dead, of course, and a grandson now lives in the house, which is disintegrating. I mean, this house has been greatly changed and has been moved, but at least it is not going to fall down. The Bird house is literally ready to collapse. The ceilings are leaking because it's huge. It desperately needs a new roof. All sorts of problems. Plus it has an acre of land on the Blind Brook with access to the sound, and you can imagine what a developer thinks about something like that. You know, he can probably put 2 houses on it. So it's on the market, and we're trying to raise funds to, if possible, preserve the building in some manner. We don't know yet what will happen. But anyway, I thought I'd fill you in on that. And I see the door opening, and a goose decoy is swimming in. We've just been waiting for you. Bring it right up here. Oh, this is a funny decoy. Where did you get this?
An antique show.
Well,
Flea market.
Flea market, that's even better. Then you hope you take advantage of it. This is not a reproduction or a recent example. This is an old decoy. How do we know? The bottom of it suffers from dry rot. You can see the dry rot, which is not really a problem. It's an indicia of age. In a piece of furniture, it would be a disaster. In a duck decoy, not such a problem. Here is the chain and the hooks for the anchors that held them in place. It's got its original painted surface. Quite a noble bird. And as I say, for the period, which is probably early 20th century. Carving of the wings. All in all, it is quite a nice bird. About $400 to $500.
Thank you very much.
I mean, there are so many of these modern duck decoys. You see them all over the place. So to find one that is a real, honest, working decoy, as the duck hunters call them, and not just a model that was made because it was interesting, it's always nice. It just doesn't happen that often. All right, so I guess we're...
No, I got one, my wife
Oh.
has, my wife used to play with this.
Oh. Oh, here he is. Oh. Howdy doody. He does it. His mouth gapes open, but it doesn't seem to want to do anything anymore, and I'm not going to try. It's an Ideal doll, Ideal Toy Company, which is located in Brooklyn, New York, as a matter of fact. And Ideal produced a great number of toys, particularly in the post-World War II period. We know he's that because, number one, he has a plastic belt, but he is hilarious. I mean, what a mouth. He probably can be fixed so that he will flap his mouth open and shut. Right now, he seems to be frozen in place. And there's also a piece of Scotch tape on here that could be taken off. That may have been to hold his mouth in place, I don't know. I mean, he's got a But he is highly collectible, no question about it. Even with the minor problems, which, as I say, I think can be fixed. The important thing is original costume, no damage to the head, just the way you would expect to find him. 200.
200.
Yeah, very good. That, oh, he had a
No, that's
turkey
not-
feather with him?
No, that's from the inkwell, I think.
Oh, that's where it came from, all right.
Still,
Yeah, still the turkey feather. All right, so I think we are temporarily awaiting our next candidate.
Can you say how you got involved, how you became an antiques expert?
Oh, that's an interesting story. Interesting to me, perhaps. I'm not sure it's interesting to anybody else. I started out, I was practicing law in Manhattan, and I hated it profoundly. I was not cut out to be a lawyer, but I'd gone to Columbia, and there I was. And so my former wife and I decided that we would take a year off and go to Europe. We went to Europe and spent most of the time in Spain, and in the course of it, we worked very hard on our Spanish, and I particularly on my reading, because I seemed to be able to read better than I could speak. And I started reading about Spanish blue and white Majolica, or it's called faience. I'm sure you've all seen it. Very colorful plates primarily, bowls, things of that sort. And when we came back to the real world, I started looking around for something that was similar. And what I found was blue decorated stoneware, crocks and jugs from the 19th century with flowers and birds and things like that, decorating them. And I started studying them, and with no particular purpose in mind. And we had a friend who worked at that time at a publishing company in Manhattan, and Funk and Wagnalls. And we assumed, or at least I assumed in my chauvinist way, that if she worked at a publishing company, she must be a secretary. All right, after all, remember, this is the 60s. And turned out, we were having dinner one time, and I was talking about this, and she said, "You should do a book on this." And I said, "Oh, come on, you know what happens, you do a book. You write the book, you carry it around under your arm until it disintegrates from age. Nobody ever buys it, and there you are." She said, "For you, it's going to be different." And it's as though she went into a phone booth and pulled off her outer clothes and revealed herself as Superman. She turns out to be the managing editor of Funk and Wagnalls, and she says, "I'm going to give you a contract for this book." So I wrote the book, and it was well received, and I suddenly realized after that book came out that I could write other books, and I might be able to earn a living as a writer, and I wouldn't have to practice law anymore, which seemed like a wonderful thing. And so that's what happened. It just went on. 40 books later, here I am, you know. But it was one of those wonderful serendipitous sort of things that happens. But it wasn't entirely unplanned, because my grandmother had been an antiques collector, and my aunt as well. And they used to take me around because I was the only person in the family who didn't think this stuff was all junk. So I think that's how a lot of it starts. You know, you find yourself in a position where you begin to know a little about it, and you begin to know a little about the background. I mean, it's something like this. I mean, the schoolhouse. Had you not, your group not rescued it, it would most certainly have been knocked to pieces and gone into the dump, because as I remember, it was being used, what, as an outbuilding for a house in Larchmont?
It was on Waverly Avenue in Mamaroneck.
I wasn't in that.
And believe it or not, it carved up, and I'm not quite sure how many people were living in it, but quite a few were living in this small space.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens, and very few of these buildings, particularly buildings like this, are preserved unless you have a historical society or a group of people who really care about it and who are willing to commit the time and in many cases the money in order to preserve it. I mean, it's not easy. I know 2 or 3 of them in upstate that are just sitting there falling apart because nobody is willing to make a commitment. I mean, you always say, well, how many antique schoolhouses do you want? But there's a need to save them because they represent a time in the history of this country where people were closer to each other and where they really lived together in a communal sort of relationship, and the school was a focus of it. Odd as it might seem, I went to a one-room schoolhouse. I'm 76, but there were not many of them around even then, but I lived in Schenectady, New York during the Second World War, and my father thought that we were going to be bombed. He wasn't aware of the fact, of course, that neither the Germans nor the Japanese had long-range bombers. Nobody had long-range bombers that could fly that far, but nevertheless, he was convinced of it. He moved us to a little town called Vischer's Ferry in Saratoga County, north of Schenectady, and he became a commuter. And we lived there, and the school was a one-room schoolhouse, first grade. There was no kindergarten, of course, but first grade through 6th grade, and my class usually would have 3 to 4 other people in it. It was very easy to be the top of the class in a situation like that. And we had a building larger than this, because we even had we had the stage, but our stage was much bigger than this one. There's a big pot-bellied stove right in the center of the room where this chimney now stands. And as you entered through the entrance doors, at one time there'd been one for boys and one for girls. But they had closed off one, and it was now everybody got to enter the same way. And the bathrooms, which were basically an outhouse that was attached to the building, were on each side as you came in. And it was set on a hillside in this sort of bucolic little town with lots of old houses and a general store and an old hotel which burned down. There couldn't have been more than 400 or 500 people in the town. And it was an amazing way to be educated. I mean, the teacher did everything. She went from one class to the other. She'd have them divided up in little groups, and she'd work with the first graders and third graders and fifth graders, that sort of thing. Did we get a good education? Well, certainly not the equivalent of the education you get today. I mean, there's too many kids and too few teachers. But it was an interesting experience. So when I saw that you were preserving this, I thought, gee, this is really wonderful. I mean, Rye doesn't have one. As far as I know, Harrison doesn't have one. I once owned a sign, which was the sign that was over one of the door of one of the district schoolhouses in Harrison, District 3 or something like that. I bought it at a tag sale, and I tried to give it to the town of Harrison. They didn't want it. You know, they didn't know what to do with this thing. I don't know if Harrison even has a historical society. I've never heard of it, but anyway, they didn't know what to do with the sign, so that was the end of it. I eventually sold it to somebody. But those things are important to preserve because if we don't, who will? And every year, more and more are destroyed. Just like the houses. You turn around and houses are gone that used to be there, and they're replaced with these huge houses which are somewhat lacking in character.
Your opinion, Bill, what can be done by the community to help save the Delancey house from a community standpoint? And what could be done to make the community more aware that underneath the land on which that house rests, as well as everything on Heathcote Hill and Nelson Hill, was a site of a skirmish battle in the Revolutionary War, and obviously there are artifacts to be found and unearthed, yet there's such a pell-mell rush to develop that there's almost everything is for sale sign on Mamaroneck. And what is it that the community can do to raise the consciousness level to search for these artifacts that are still buried in the soil just a few inches under their feet?
Well, certainly there are artifacts because in Schooner's history of Westchester County, he talks about the fact that when new homes, and new at that time would have been Victorian homes, were being built on top of Heathcote Hill, that they uncovered several burials. And there was a mass grave up there. There has to have been, because the Battle of Heathcote Hill involved an attack by a group of American regulars on a group of Tories led by Robert Rogers, who of course is famous for his exploits in the French and Indian War on behalf of the colonies and the English, but who was on the other side during the Revolutionary War, and he was not the only one. Many were, and so somewhere up there, there's probably a mass grave, and certainly there are. Supposedly, this house was removed in order to make way for the women's club. That's what I have been told.
1901.
Yeah, so there's no question but what it's a historic area. One of the advantages that a historical society or interested individuals have is in a struggle of this sort, trying to save a building like this, is that if you can convince a court that there are historic objects on the site, Native American burial ground, village, something of that sort, that you can require them under federal law, you can require the developer to pay for an archaeological dig to see what they come up with. And if they come up with something significant enough, then it will prevent development. We saw that in New York City with the Black Burial Ground, where it was effective. Development on that particular site was effectively stopped because you discovered all of these graves. And you offend too many people if you start digging up their ancestors and tossing them out so that you can build condos. But it's hard. I mean, it's very, very hard. We're not sure we'll win in Rye because there are so many historic sites, and you can only fund a certain number of them. For example, Katie Height, who is the director of the Westchester County Historical Society, points out that house museums are struggling today. Structures like this, I mean, used to be that you would get large numbers of students coming in, and the schools would pay pretty generously for their children to come through and to be talked to about the significance of the site. Many schools today don't have money to do that, and insurance has gone up. If you have the kids in, you've got to have a liability, expensive liability policy in case they fall on their noses. So the result is that many of these historic sites are in desperate financial trouble. So when you go out and try to convince your community, in this case Mamaroneck, that you should take on another one of these, I don't think anybody is going to say to you, oh, this is a terrible idea, this is just a piece of junk, because this is a building with a real history. I mean, not only the one of the founding families of Mamaroneck, but also the fact that James Fenimore Cooper was married and lived here for a couple of years. And he's probably one of the most famous writers dealing with that period, the period of the Indian Wars, the 1850s, 1860s, that period. Despite the fact that some of the stuff is pretty hard to read. I recently read The Prairie, which is the last one, and at that point our friend Hawkeye is in about as good physical shape as I am, and he's sort of stumbling around out there in the West. He's a shadow of his former self, but the issue is so often money. That's what it really is. I think the more interest you can generate in the community, drawing people to come in to speak about the importance of the house, the newspaper coverage. So far, the most interesting thing that I have read, and the most thorough thing I have read, was Judge Lang's article in this funny little paper from New Rochelle, the name of which I don't even recall now. It's a very controversial newspaper.
The Guardian.
That's it, Guardian. I don't know if any of you saw that, but it is a wonderful article. He lays out the history. He lays out why that building should be saved. And I mean, I've seen other articles, but nothing like that.